So most healthcare practices don't really have a luxury feel. And if you're one of those organizations who wants to implement that and have that be a differentiator for you in the marketplace, you're going to have to go beyond results. You're going to have to go beyond what you're doing now. And so this episode, I wanted to dive into some things and an action plan to help you do that. Now, most offices that are in the world of healthcare, they charge based on what insurance will cover. But there are offices and there are practices that charge premium prices. They do so because they plan to offer premium services. Unfortunately, their plan is never implemented to the level of premium service. So let's use an example. You walk into their waiting room, it's filled with patients. They're all waiting on the doctor because the doctor's running late. The phone is ringing off the hook. Their front desk is overwhelmed. The phone is ringing. They pick it up. Hi, can you hold? Hi, can you hold? Hi, can you hold? They're not offering a premium service. They're offering the same service that they can get at any of their competitors. And it doesn't matter what the results are from the survey, from, whatever service they're offering if no one gets past the front desk. So I thought in this episode, it would be helpful to go through how healthcare organizations typically operate and the process that they put their patients through and how you can up-level it into a higher luxury brand experience that not only retains clients, but has them sending you every referral that they know because they've had such an excellent experience. And it helps you build relationships with patients as people. Now, you didn't go into healthcare because you don't care about people. Nobody is going to go to medical school and go through all of that trouble because they don't care about people. Of course, you care about people, but chances are, if you're a doctor of any type, you are severely overwhelmed. And it's only gotten worse because of COVID. So, my hope is with this episode that you will be inspired to go back to the reason that you started practicing medicine and that you consider that there's another option than filling your waiting room with a bunch of people and charging them only what the insurance will cover instead of the premium prices you deserve for a premium brand experience. So let's go through what premium actually means. So premium gives off the impression that it's expensive, but it's also worth it. And so a lot of times premium just comes across as the same service for more money. And that's not what we want our people to feel. It's not what we want patients to feel. We want them to feel like they're special. Because then paying the extra premium pricing isn't an issue. They're happy to do it because they can see and they can feel that this actually is a better experience. Not only will they pay more when they feel valued, but they'll also tell all of the people that they know about their experience, which automatically increases the number of people that you work with. Now, let's take a step back because we just talked about that full waiting room, which seems to be the goal for a lot of medical practices. What if that's not the goal? What if the goal is actually bringing in the right number of people that are the right fit for your office and they don't mind paying more? That is where the world is going as far as being able to stand out in an industry and make your way. Now, if you missed my episode that I did last week on creating a premium brand experience for your office, you might want to go check that out. I'll link it to this video so that you can I'll pin it at the end so that you can revisit that video. It's going to give you some great tips on how to start strategizing the way that you can become the Tiffany or Cartier of your industry. So a lot of times organizations have the right intention, like they want to create a premium experience for their business and for the people that they do business with. So in the case of healthcare, they want to create a premium experience for their patients. The problem is they don't really know how to do that. They only know how to operate in a clinical manner, like, because that's where they're trained. Doctors aren't trained to be marketers. Duh. Like, you're trained to be doctors. And so you need someone to come in and show you how to amplify your customer experience and get your customers and anyone else that you are investing with your marketing to turn people into customers that can resolutely explain how you're different and how you operate differently. So let's talk about um, so the other reason that this happens is that you have people that are focused on the parts of the organization that make it efficient. And so you have operations, well, they're focusing on operations, they're focusing on processes and systems, and they're not focusing on the patient. They're focusing on how can we make it more smooth for our end of the business. Nobody is focusing on the perceived value. Like, what do your patients actually feel like they're paying for? If they're paying extra, do they actually feel like they're getting a concierge experience? And if the patient is paying, if your patients are paying a premium price, but they feel like a commodity, how long do you think they're going to stick around? And how often do you think they're going to refer other people to your office? Probably not long and not many. So it's okay to charge premium prices, but make sure you're delivering and you have an action plan that is going to make people feel special. So let's talk a little bit about some of the places that people go wrong. The first, and I have 5 touch points that are going to give you away as far as not delivering a premium experience and what to do instead. So let's talk about the first interaction. Most people will pick up a phone and have a phone call with somebody in your office at the front desk. If that experience is, hello, can you hold please? Hello, can you hold please? And then they're holding for 15 minutes and there's just generic waiting music there and they're getting more annoyed as they sit there. Then they come on the line. How can I help you? They don't really want to know anything about the patient. They just want to get them on the calendar and they want to move on to the next person. Part of this is being understaffed, and part of this is not creating the expectation that your patient is the reason you're in business. Your future patient is the reason you're in business. And so rather than that, the phone call, if you're delivering a premium experience, would go a little something like this. Hi, this is Alisa. How can I help you today? Or this is Alisa and this is Dr. Thank you for calling Dr. Smith's office. This is Alisa. How can I help you today? They're not put on hold. They're not endlessly listening to hold music. And their phone call has been answered within 2 rings. The next question from that person is, tell me what's going on. Actually interested in what's happening with that person and having that person at the front desk listen and document the things that are going on with that person. Documenting what's going on with the patient is very important because otherwise people don't feel like they're being listened to. And when they have to repeat information, they feel like a number. They feel like a commodity. If you want to deliver a premium brand experience, you have to spend the time to get to know your patients, your clients, your customers, whichever applies. This one is specifically healthcare. Next, based on what you shared, I think that, and this is very important when you have multiple doctors and when you have multiple doctors that do the same thing. Based on the information that you've shared, I really think the best fit for what's going on with you is going to be Dr. So-and-so. And the reason I think that is Dr. So-and-so specializes in helping people with A, B, and C. Can we look, and then from there, this is what you can expect in your first visit. That feels so much better than, okay, you're scheduled with Dr. Smith and you can be here at 8 o'clock and you'll need to fill out your paperwork. And even if you do it online, you're still going to have to do it again. So, whatever that is, one version of this phone call treats somebody like they're an interruption. The other treats them like they've been waiting for your call. That feels very, very different. When you are giving somebody an experience that makes them feel like they're special from the get-go, and it takes so little to do that, that is where it starts. Now, the second place that people go wrong, and I know if you've been to a doctor's office, you've experienced this, is the waiting room. Again, people come in, they're treated like a number, they're handed a stack of papers with a clipboard, and they're told to go fill them out, even if they've already filled them out online. Not only are you wasting their time, you're treating them like what is going on with them doesn't matter. And if you have additional paperwork that needs to be completed, so they sit down and they're thinking to themselves, I already filled this out. Why do I have to do it again? Why don't they have my insurance from last time? Or why can't I just check a box that it hasn't changed? Or if they've asked me that it's changed, if it's changed and I've said no, why am I filling this out again? And the same goes for, this is a personal example. The same goes for when they should have your history because you filled it out and your So in the meantime, you have a patient that's sitting in the waiting room with a clipboard with 8 pages of paperwork that they've already filled out online, and they're wondering, why am I filling this out again? Why did I fill it out online if I have to do it again while I'm here? And why can't they even remember that I have the same insurance? I just got done telling them, yet I have to fill it out on this form. Versus a premium experience where you have an advisor who comes, sits with an iPad, they're filling out the forms or answering questions that maybe got missed or reviewing information that they have questions on. And they're offering the patient a beverage of their choice. So maybe that's coffee or water or whatever that might be. And then they tell them what's going on with the doctor because doctors run behind. That's part of the Unfortunately, that's just part of how a doctor's schedule operates. You never know if you're going to run into something in with a patient that is going to take more time. Doctors run behind. But wouldn't it be nice to let the patient know that as soon as they arrived or even before they arrived? Hey, Dr. Smith is running 10 minutes behind. Here are your options. You can come in and you can wait and we'll make sure you're comfortable. And we've got beverages, whatever for you. You can reschedule. Here's a link to reschedule that or call us right away and we'll get you on the calendar. Or, um, okay. Versus a premium experience where the forms are filled out online, or if there are additional questions or things that need to be added, a advisor is sitting with the patient with their iPad, filling out that information or getting detailed information on things that they have questions. During that time, as soon as they arrive, they get offered coffee or water or whatever it might be to ensure that their waiting experience is going to be pleasurable. Then they also get notified and kept in the loop about what's going on with the doctor. Dr. Smith is running 10 minutes behind. He had a patient that took a little longer and that bumped his schedule. If you have two options, you can either wait and we'll get you in as soon as, as soon as we can. It's going to be between 10 and 15 minutes longer. Or if you need to reschedule, we can also do that for you right now. You're in that tells the patient you're important to us and your time matters instead of just assuming that they're going to wait for half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever that might be. You give them the option to either move forward with the appointment and know they're going to be waiting and in, making that wait as pleasurable as possible for them, or you reschedule the appointment. And you have the flexibility to do that when you aren't trying to see every patient under the sun because you don't have to. The third touch point where people lose the luxury feel of the experience when it comes to medical is in the exam room. How many times have you walked into an exam room and the nurse, or it's usually the nurse, The physician's assistant or the nurse takes your vitals and asks questions that you've already answered on the paperwork and says the doctor will be right in to see you. And then the time is ticking 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes. Nobody's coming to tell you, where is the doctor? You're just sitting there waiting. Usually not in your most comfortable outfit. You're in a paper gown waiting for the doctor to show up. The patient is sitting there thinking, okay, they don't appreciate my time, or why did I even make an appointment if I have to sit here for another half an hour? I've already answered all the questions that she's asking me. And, what the heck? Like, why did I even bother? Versus the premium experience where the doctor comes in versus when versus a premium experience where the medical assistant will come in and have this conversation. Hey, Dr. Smith has already reviewed your paperwork that you submitted. Thank you for submitting that online. We've clarified a few questions that I will put in the notes so he's aware of that. And I want to make sure that he can focus on exactly what's going on with you with the time you guys have together. So are there any specific questions that you want me to have put in front of him so that he can be prepared before he comes in and that we can make sure that we answer? After that, the doctor arrives within 5 minutes, sits down and says, I understand you're dealing with swollen ankle, for example. Tell me more about how that's affecting your life. Not like, pre-diagnosing, not, going through paperwork, asking the same questions as the medical assistant already asked, is actually invested in what's going on with you and how it's affecting your life. So a perfect example of this is when I would go to my general practitioner and had a hysterectomy like 4 years prior. And every time I would go in, it's on the paperwork. They've asked me, they know. They're like, okay, when was your last period? That tells me everything I need to know about that practice. I am a number to them and they don't care because I have to repeat every single time the same health information that is sitting there in the paperwork that I just filled out. That hasn't changed. No one came and put my uterus back in. And they're on autopilot. They don't care about the patient. They care about getting through whatever process they've been assigned, and that's it. So instead of making the patient feel like an individual and that they're seen, they make them feel like they're just being put through another process. If you're going to charge premium prices and become the luxury brand of your industry, you have to do the former. You have to make people feel seen and heard and like they matter. So touch point number 4, where people get lost, is after their visit. And this specifically applies to surgical procedures. And I'll give you an example of good and bad from my own history. One is that after your visit, whether that's the fourth place that people make a mistake on this journey is post-visit. And usually after you've seen the doctor, the next component of that is go to the front desk and schedule your follow-up or your next year's appointment or whatever that is. And then you get an automated reminder like a day or two ahead so that you show up. And that's it. When you're offering a premium experience, you get a personalized call or a text from the doctor or the medical assistant 48 hours after the visit to make sure that everything was handled or addressed in your appointment, to answer any questions, to see if there are additional things that need to be happening. So, for example, if you have surgery and you have somebody call and follow up with you to see if everything's going okay, or if you need medication, or if your pain is being treated okay, That feels very luxurious versus here's your prescription, good luck. And more often than not, the medical community is focusing on the first. That's why people feel like numbers. That's why they're disgruntled. That's why um, the medical community is getting a bad rep. And I get it. When you're overwhelmed, you have to do that. But I'm asking you to flip the script and think about this in a different way. The other way that people can provide a premium experience is with follow up. Like maybe you send an email or someone on your team sends an email that says, hey, this is what we discussed so people can remember. Here's the items that I recommended that you think about or implement or that to keep an eye on. And if you have any questions, let me know. It's a written summary. You can now do it with AI. There's no reason you can't create this written summary anymore. You can have AI in the appointment, have them, you know, uh, record and script what was said in the conversation, turn it into a report, and email it out. There's no reason you can't do that. And the difference is felt immediately. One feels like a you're checking out at a grocery store or the DMV, and the other feels like you are being taken care of by a physician who really cares about you and your health and improving your well-being. Because most people don't go to the doctor when they're well, they go when they don't feel well. And so nobody wants to be treated like a number when they don't feel well. They want to be treated like they matter and what they're saying is important and that somebody is invested in their recovery. And then touch point number 5, this is probably the area I would focus on first because it's the most important to the patient, and that is billing. More often than not, when you go to a regular doctor 3 weeks later, you get a bill, you don't understand it. There's a bunch of stuff on there that doesn't make sense. Sometimes you get the bill and then they haven't sent it to the insurance or vice versa. It can even take longer if they send it to the insurance first and then you get the bill and you're not understanding what's happening. And so it's all done very automatically, leaving the patient to feel like I'm just, again, I'm paying for something that, and then when they get the bill, they try to call and they get put on hold and then they get sent to the billing department. Well, the billing department is either overwhelmed, on lunch, on break, not answering, or doesn't have the answer. And so they're even more frustrated because now they've paid for this experience that they was supposed to be a luxury experience or a high-end experience, and it's feeling very, very, it's feeling like it's not a luxury experience at all. It's feeling like it's what they would have received at any other office. And instead of before they leave, having exactly what's going to happen described to them. This is what's going to happen. We're going to bill your insurance. Once we receive payment from your insurance, then we are going to call you, go through your bill, discuss everything so you know exactly what was covered, what wasn't covered, why it wasn't covered. And we don't want to have any surprise billing for you, for us, or for anyone else. And so if you have any questions, we're going to answer those. And then we're going to send you a full report on what we talked about so you don't have to remember the conversation. You can read through it anytime you want. The difference is billing creates anxiety for people. It creates stress. And we want to be able to eliminate that, especially in a luxury um, situation where we're trying to create a luxury experience for people. We need to create trust, and you can't create trust when you're creating anxiety. They can't exist at the same time. And so the more we prepare for that conversation and the more that we prepare the patient for that conversation, the easier that trust is going to be to not only create, but maintain. So let's use an example. So there was a, uh, So let's use an example. Say you have a orthopedic surgeon who goes to stay at the Ritz-Carlton for a conference. He runs a very successful practice, maybe $30, $50 million in revenue, has excellent surgeons, and is really trying to figure out why they're not standing out in the industry and why they're not, even though they want to charge higher prices, or maybe they are charging higher prices, their business isn't growing. So he stays at the Ritz-Carlton, and this is his experience. He checks in, and then he noticed that the doorman remembered his name after the first visit. The next day, he realizes they figured out that he prefers morning coffee versus afternoon cocktails. They call him. He noticed that they called him by name and not room number. Most hotels, you become the room number and not the person because you're a transaction. And he thought to himself, I really am. He probably thinks to himself, I'm really enjoying being humanized in a very non-human world. Are we having the same experience, or are our patients having the same experience when they are coming to visit us? So he returns to the office and he does some observing, and he audits his own practice. So the first thing he does is calls and acts as though he's a new patient to see what that experience is. He gets put on hold and he sits there for 15 minutes. By the time somebody comes back, they ask him some very brief questions, nothing really about what's going on with him, and then schedule him with a doctor. He watched his waiting room and he just saw that patients were sitting there waiting and filling out forms, and nobody seemed very happy. They looked anxious or bored or sometimes even a little bit angry. He reviewed what the process looks like for new patients, the intake process, and how cumbersome it was and how many times things got repeated or information was asked for more than one time or was simply ignored. And then he checked into their follow-up process and realized that either one, they weren't really following up at all, or two, the process seemed very cold and inhuman and not connective at all. And then he started to look at outside perspective, like what were online reviews saying? What were people saying about them on social media? Were they getting referrals? What were the referrals saying? How many of the referrals actually became patients? And what was the overall theme for all of those places? And what he found was great doctors, love the surgeons. The staff outside of the surgeons is horrible. The office experience was awful. The follow-up was non-existent. He didn't have very good reviews. And an online reputation is challenging to correct, especially if you're not aware of it. So what did he do to change the situation? Well, he's smart. He hired somebody outside of the industry to help him implement unreasonable hospitality. And what he did was hired someone from the hospitality industry, and her job was to make every customer touch point feel like a luxury. And so what did they do? They made these changes in the first 90 days. They retrained their phone staff. They were told to answer calls within 3 rings and never put anyone on hold. Do you think people get put on hold at the Ritz-Carlton? Absolutely not. Call. You don't believe me? Call. The second thing they did was made sure that the waiting room felt more like more luxurious. Patients were offered a beverage of their choice. If they had already completed paperwork, they were handed an iPad. If they needed to complete paperwork, they were handed an iPad to do it. And they were assigned a concierge to help them complete the paperwork if they had questions. Or if there were additional questions that needed to be answered because the doctor already reviewed the paperwork, the concierge helped them to fill in the blanks. And then if the doctor was running behind, they were either texted before they got to the office to let them know that the doctor was running behind to see if they wanted to reschedule or still come in, or they were reminded when they got to the office if they didn't have text availability for the patient that the doctor is running behind. You're welcome to stay. It's going to be this much longer, or we can reschedule you, at your convenience. Um, the next thing was working on the medical assistant staff and teaching them how to, or ensuring that the patient felt heard before the doctor ever entered the conversation or the room. That whatever that patient was sharing with them was listened to, documented, and communicated to the doctor prior to the doctor arriving. When the doctor came in, the doctors didn't need a lot of training. They know how to treat people like people, but they made sure that they took the time to have a conversation with the person, to use their name, and to ask about their life, not just their symptoms. And then the follow-up for every patient was that they got a personalized phone call within 48 hours, either from the medical assistant, the doctor, or both. This is how they elevated their practice. This is how they elevated their brand. Yes, it took extra time. Yes, it took extra attention. The result is patient satisfaction was up 34%. Online reviews went from 4.2 to 4.7 stars. Referrals were up 28%. And their revenue was up 4.1 million year over year for the same patient base, spending more money and referring more people. And so when we talk about the luxury experience paying for itself, this is a prime example of where it has worked, where that doctor took what he learned from a luxury brand and applied it to his own practice. So if you want to do this, what is the process to do this? Well, we just went through the process with this example, but I want to make sure you have the steps. So the first one is you have to audit what's going on. You have to take a month and look and see what's going on with your phone calls, with your waiting room, with your medical assistant staff, how you're treating patients when you're in the room with them, how your follow-up system is and how patients are relating or not relating to it. And then last but not least, billing. Like you have to look at all of those pieces. You have to go and see what's being said about you out in the world. And if you don't like it, then you need to start there and start fixing it. Month 2, fix the easy stuff. Fix what's the most obvious. So if it's phone calls, people are waiting on hold too long, if that's what people are complaining about. If it's billing, fix that first. Fix the biggest problems first because the rest will seem smaller as you go along. Pick the top 3 things that need to be addressed immediately and focus on those. Take the time to train your staff and make them feel heard, because when your staff feels heard, it's easier for them to hear your patients. When they feel heard by you, when they feel listened to, they are more willing to go the extra mile for you. And that's what we're trying to create. This isn't just an experience for the patients. This is a culture you're building within your organization. And then remove friction points. So if you have forms that can be completed online and they're still being completed, by paper, eliminate the paper forms. If you have older people that come in and they can't complete the forms online, sit with them and do it on an iPad for them. Because chances are they're intimidated by the technology, which why wouldn't you be? Like it's completely changed. Their entire lifetime has changed. And some people are not as adaptive to technology, but that's okay. We're there to help them. We're there to offer them the premium experience. And then the last month of this is you review and refine. So you're going to see this is not a one-time, one and done fix. Pieces are going to have to continue to be refined. things are going to have to continue to evolve. And as your patients give you feedback, it's going to be easier to know what to change, when to change it, and how to change it. When you're asking for feedback, get really specific and listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying. Listen to the questions you're asking and make sure that you're asking better questions that give you the feedback that you want. So, for example, like, what during this entire interaction with our practice made you feel valued, made you feel like you were important to us, and what didn't? And the second of those questions is probably going to be more important because you need to know what you're not doing right so that you can fix it and it doesn't show up again. So if this resonated with you and it's feeling like this is something you want to offer for your brand and for your business, I offer a 30-minute introductory call where we can sit down and talk through what you're doing, talk through the process of what may or may not be working. Or if you don't have time to audit your own business, that's something that we can talk about having me come in and do with your team. The link to book that call is below this video. And if you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to share it with someone else, even if they're in a different industry, because they may find value in this video as well and be able to apply it to their business, where we can all start being more human with one another and having more human interactions. That's how we create luxury brands. That's how we create success. And I would love to be your partner to do that. So thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and the subscribe button to get more content. I'll see you next week. In the meantime, take care, be well, and stay safe.